This is INCRadio, DZEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ, or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Good morning. Welcome to INCRadio South Central State Satellite Studio. We are here today in Fort Worth, and our topic is going to be football versus rugby. I've got two guests here who I'll introduce, but please, let's keep it clean today. No fighting, okay? So let's go ahead and introduce our guests.
All right, I'll go first. Nathan Russell, and I'd be representing rugby. I played rugby for about I think 6 seasons, starting at Division 2, and then as I got older and in less shape, ended up in Division 4. But yeah, I'll be representing rugby.
My name is Andrew Ramirez. I'll be representing the football. I played, of course, in high school, and then I also played 4 years in college, Division 2.
Very good. So, like I said, let's keep it clean today. No fighting. So first of all, let's start with Andrew. How did you get into football?
It was kind of a Sunday thing. We always used to watch football with my parents and mainly my father, my uncle, my brother. Something we do in the backyard, throwing around the football and whatnot. And then once we got old enough and we felt, I guess my father felt we could protect ourselves enough, we went ahead and tried out playing football. First, we went ahead and started with an intramural, kind of to start out, learn the actual game positions and whatnot. He didn't want us to jump us right into middle school football and kind of be lost. So once we learned it, my 8th grade year, we finally jumped into it. But it was kind of a progression, created more of a love for the game after you actually learn it. It's not just people hitting heads.
Cool. And what position did you play in football?
Oh gosh. So I started out as a quarterback when I was younger. I could run really well. I had a very good arm. I could literally throw it 50 yards standing still. But as I progressed and got older, looking at my ethnicity, my height, I went ahead and transitioned over to defensive back because I played both sides of the ball. When you're younger, you typically do both sides, offense and defense. As I got older and starting to realize, okay, well, if I really want to try to have a shot, which I know is almost impossible, literally, looking at what the odds of me actually trying to make it or at least try to get into college, I realized it'd probably be best for me to go ahead and play on the defensive side. So once I got rid of the quarterback thing, I went to defense. Defense, I played a total of cornerback, linebacker, safety, nickel, and I played a little bit of middle linebacker when it came to goal line stance as well too. And I was a punter.
When you were growing up in high school, just so everyone knows, you played in Texas.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, because we have a big thing here in Texas when it comes to football.
The highest attendance was 22,000 for my games.
Well, yeah, and I've noticed like on social media, a lot of the high schools have stadiums that will beat regular stadiums that NFL people play on.
Yes.
Oh yeah, easily.
I was
They're massive.
My senior year, we were undefeated, ranked number 5 in the nation. Ranked, of course, I think we're at number 2 in the state. And then I remember literally getting, police escorts to the stadiums. They brought in extra seating benches for the sides and everything. And literally, I think the playoff games when we were there, anywhere between 20,000 and 22,000 easily.
Wow. So Nate, how about you? How did you get into rugby?
Yeah, it's funny because I never played sports really growing up. I played some soccer, just children's league soccer growing up. I was actually in my late 20s when I was a teacher, and I stumbled across what's called rugby sevens, which is like a smaller version of rugby. But it was very exciting to watch. So if you want to kind of get introduced to the sport, you can watch the sevens version. It's where they cut the team size in half. Typically, you run with 15, but then they'll just play with 7 on the same size field. So then I was looking up, like, oh, I wonder if they have any rugby teams in Houston, which where I was at the time. And Katy, the city that I was living in, they had a rugby team, and so I showed up and joined, and they were a Division II rugby team. So that's how I got into it.
Now, so since you guys didn't have a full team per se, um, what what position did you play in rugby?
No, we did have a full team. I was
Oh,
just
you
talking
did.
about the sevens version, but yeah, it was a full fledged team. We even had a full bench and everything. A lot of the players that I played with at the time, they had played overseas. So I played with guys that played in South Africa, in England. Our coach, he was from England. He played on some big club for England, and that's how a lot of like rugby players here they get back into the sport. They played overseas, they come here and they connect with others and they find out. And a lot of people are surprised that rugby is actually really big in the United States. Almost
Mhm.
every major city will have at least one rugby club.
Yeah. So for our audience, I did put a question in there, and it is question of the day, which is, did you play an organized sport? So if you'd like to chime in, please feel free to do so. So let's go back to our guest. So between the two of you, what do you think was more challenging, football or rugby, and why?
I think I can speak to the fact that I would have to say rugby, and just to go off our conversations, honestly, if you think about it, the average play for football, honestly, is like 5 seconds.
Hmm.
There is no the ball keeps on going the entire time with y'all, don't y'all? I mean, like you
Right.
said, I mean, when the ball is dead for us, it's dead, and even though it's an endurance game, at the end of the day, still, I mean, you still get those little spurts of breaks. But these guys, I mean, to keep on running the entire time, I, I, I would say endurance, and when it comes to physicality of the game, I would say definitely rugby. I don't, for me personally speaking, on the mind game of it, a lot of people don't think about it too much, but I think it takes a lot of work when it comes to studying film and knowing the other opponent as best you can when it comes to football, because that's the way you win. You have to do a lot. I mean, I was a great student of the game. That's the only reason why I was able to play as long as I did. But I would say rugby wise, I mean, I don't
What
know. I
about you,
can't really.
Nate?
Well, I played alongside like football players, and I'm very familiar with football. And there, you're right that like it's a constant game. There's some parallels though, because like football has downs. Well, rugby also has downs where like once the ball goes down, there's like a quote unquote line of scrimmage, but the play keeps going. Okay, so it doesn't stop. So the team could actually fight. The other team can actually fight to
Get
get
the
the
ball.
ball. But playing with former like football players, they said it's different. It's a different type of training because, like you said, you studied film. Because in football, you have a very specialized task in your
Hmm.
position,
Mhm.
right? And so you end up doing a lot of repetitions for that. So he said it's not really that one is necessarily tougher than the other.
Hmm.
They're tough in their own way,
Mhm.
is how you can think of it. But in rugby, everybody could have a chance to carry the ball. Everybody has to be able to tackle because at any point, like even the kicker, like in football, there's a penalty called roughing the kicker. You can't hit
Uh-huh.
him too hard.
Yes.
There's no roughing the kicker in rugby. If the guy's kicking the ball and you want to hit him, you can hit him.
And and I do agree because when I notice like with football, it's 60 minutes, but you guys do stop, once the ball's dead, it's dead. But with rugby, you guys are like 80 minutes of continuous playing.
Right. You have to manage that though, versus like in football, everything's like in spurts. So
Hmm.
you train for that.
Mhm.
You train to be able to hit and hit and hit, every few seconds. So it's just different,
It
really.
is just like I said, I've never played it. I've seen it, and like I said, I almost got into it, but I was too afraid of honestly hurting my head because of the way I played. But yeah, the
So
endurance.
speaking of what you said, training. Okay, what are the trainings you guys have to do for each sport? So let's go ahead and start with Nate. Like, what type of training do you have to do to be able to play rugby?
Lots of running. So in rugby, it's lots of running and also like the set pieces. So basically the scenarios that are most common in the game. Now, I didn't get to mention this yet, but my position would be more related to maybe like a linebacker or somebody who was on the line. So I was always in what they call the pack. So the bigger guys, the more fit guys are the ones who end up with the ball the most and would run the ball the most.
Mhm.
Whereas like me, we would be the ones that would be, uh, especially like in the scrum. You've probably seen the scrum with there's like two groups of
Mhm.
guys who are fighting for the ball. But yeah, we were the bigger guys and we would fight for the ball. Now, in as far as training is concerned, like yeah, it's mostly just those scenarios. Like okay, when the ball goes down, this is what we do. We train that scenario over and over and over. It's like, or if we're on defense, right? How do we reset as quickly as we can?
I would say for me, I was a defensive back. So again, a lot of running. You kind of think of it. Okay, if you got somebody running at you full speed, you've got to run the same speed but backwards. And the same turn, when someone's about to pass you because they're running so fast, you got to flip your hips and keep up without losing a step. So I mean, it's a lot of flexibility, believe it or not. I mean, a lot of stretching, and short bursts. We never ever in college when I played, we never timed our 40. We always timed our 20 because if you can't catch them in the first 20 yards, the play's over.
Mm.
Oh,
We never ever did that, and that's what helped me out in my game when I was in college.
that's interesting. So there was one thing I saw in rugby where they would throw up a person in the air to try to catch the
Oh
ball.
yeah,
What is that?
that's the line out. So there's actually some basis of rugby that came from soccer. And so it's similar to the throw in. So both teams they would line up. And the reason why they would hold them up in the air is that anybody can contest that ball. And so it just evolved to where, okay, well, let me, raise my guy higher. So then the other team will do that too. So that's all that is. If the ball goes out of bounds, then they do that throw in. Yeah.
Because in football, I don't think I've ever seen them lift anybody. I know people would like jump over like the huddle to get to like
No,
the goal.
they have a push tush now.
Oh,
It's
really?
yeah, from the Eagles. You know what I'm talking about. You help them get into the end zone, just a little nudge.
Yeah. But because I've seen people like jumping over, right? To
Yeah.
get to the end zone.
It's funny that you mentioned that because in rugby, you're not allowed to leave the ground. So you can't
Hmm.
jump over or hurdle anybody. And
Ah.
it's for safety reasons. I think back in the day, there was like hardly any rules in rugby. So when you watch like old footage from like the 70s, it's like these guys are just beating each other up. But yeah, it's a lot more safety conscious now, even though we don't have any pads or anything. But
Mhm.
like we can't hit high on the body. Everything has to be below the chest. You can't just like flip somebody over. So that's where kind of like football can be a little bit rougher because you could just
Yeah.
lay a big hit on somebody's face, basically. Whereas
Yeah.
we can't do that in rugby, at least not now.
So I do have a question from one of our listeners, and her question is, how does one get into rugby in the States?
You just find a club. So there are actually men's and women's clubs. There's different levels. So if you find like a Division 4 club, you're talking about people who are just casually getting into it. Guys like me, older guys. They don't take it too seriously. It's mostly just to have fun. All the way up to Division 1. They also have a professional league now. Back when I was playing, there wasn't. So I was playing at like the second highest level. And that's kind of like the roots of rugby too. It's mostly geared toward like amateur clubs because the sport didn't go professional until the mid 90s.
Oh,
So
wow.
nobody was getting paid to play. So everything was just like, hey, we have this club together and we have to like basically fund everything ourselves. So yeah.
Cool. So another question I have is, in football, you guys have your shoulder pads and your hard helmets. In rugby, you guys have a helmet, but it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Even though it looks like rugby's more physical, why do you guys not have shoulder pads and helmets?
Well, we do actually have shoulder pads. Some players have it, some players don't wear it, but we're talking about like a quarter inch
Mhm.
thick of foam, and that's it. There's nothing hard
Mhm.
on that pad. And the same for that helmet.
Helmet.
It's just like it's really really thin. The purpose of the helmet isn't to protect your head from like impacts. It's to protect your head from like abrasions and stuff like that because you'd be going up against the ground and everything, you'd be cut up. I actually wore a helmet just to keep my head warm whenever it would be cold.
Okay.
So not even for safety.
Nope. Yeah. Oh yeah, it doesn't do anything for you. No.
Not that thin. No. Even with my helmet, I had a couple concussions.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why I was just curious because, like I said, your rugby seems more physical. Yet in football, you guys have the shoulder pads and the helmet. Now, was that heavy?
No, not really. Honestly, you get used to it. You really do. I mean, you got the pads and everything else on. I mean, it's something you kind of get accustomed to after a while. I know in the very usually the first week or two, your neck gets kind of used to the whole weight of the helmet.
Yeah.
I would notice like on the first week, I would get a whole bunch of abrasions and scrapes on my neck just from the contact. But after that, I mean, you're doing the same thing, but later on in the season, but you don't get the abrasions anymore because I guess your body's gotten used to it.
What kind of cleats did y'all have? Were they rubber?
I did both, honestly, and as I got older in the years, I started going with the screw-ins. The reason being is because, like anything else, I like to change my cleats out. If it started to rain,
Right.
I mean, I would go to the 3/4 inch cleats, especially being a defense, running around and cutting. And it'd make a huge difference because if you're on the natural turf, the natural grass, man, those muddy fields would get really bad
Yeah.
sometimes.
We had metal studs. You can get metal studs, like 1/2 inch metal. They're aluminum. So there's that difference. And yeah, it hurts if someone steps on it, steps
So-
on your hand or something.
So you guys had cleats, but you could do metal studs.
Yeah, there were metal studs for our cleats. They allow it.
Wow.
So Renz has a question for you, Nate, and he says, as someone who played rugby, does your team have what they call haka?
The haka. No, that was New Zealand. Yeah, that's a New Zealand thing. I did play with a lot of Islanders though, but they didn't have a haka. No.
Okay. So on parts of the game, I see where you have each team on each side, but they're all like in a huddle trying to move each other. What is that and why do you do it?
Yeah, that's the scrum. So that comes after a penalty. So let's say your team has a penalty against them, then the other team, they get to feed the ball into that, scrum, and both sides get to fight for it. The advantage being that if you're feeding in the ball, then you'll know when the ball's going to go in, and your guy knows how to fight for it first. But either team could win the ball in that scenario. And just to think like how much pressure is in that scrum. So it's 8 guys who are packed in. Let's just be conservative about it. So that would be 16 guys in total. And let's say they were just doing like 100 pounds of pressure.
Gosh.
Okay, that's very very
Conservative.
modest. Okay, it's probably closer to like 300, 400 pounds. But if it was just you're talking about 1,600 pounds at the very least with minimal effort. So you can imagine like how much pressure is in
Going
there.
at each other.
And yeah, there's times where it's like it would collapse, and those guys are still pushing, and then like your head's like up down to your knees, and you're feeling that on your back. But fortunately, I didn't get any back injuries. Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything like that in football, right?
No, not really. I mean, well, the closest thing will be to is a goal line stance or something where, I mean, you only got a couple inches to go. So, I mean, you're just gonna, just bury your head down and hey, you just got to make it an inch or two. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what the Eagles do. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, it's what 98% they win. They win.
Yeah.
And I noticed like with football, they try to get people with size and strength, right? Because they're just like little bursts. But in rugby, when I was looking at it, they said that they try to get people with speed and agility. Why do you think that is?
Well, not really speed, but you need the endurance. Like everybody on that team has to be able to run, even if like you're one of the bigger guys. So I was like 260 pounds at the most when I trained for one season, but I also had to be able to run like a lot. You had to run for like the whole 80 minutes. And another thing too is like in football is you have an offense side and a defense side. Typically you don't play both, but in rugby you're playing that whole 80 minutes, offense and defense. So there are subs, but for the most part you'll be playing that entire game. So yeah, running is the biggest thing.
Because I heard also in rugby, even though you have people on the bench, they play because of how physical the sport is, right? Because I know in football, you guys will have people on the bench who will probably not ever come out on the field, right?
Water boy.
When also the numbering system's different. So like in football, how do y'all do the numbers?
It depends on if you're a lineman, you're only allowed to have certain numbers. If you're a quarterback, if you're a receiver, running back, and whatnot.
Did you ever get to pick your number?
I did. I always had typically a single number, but when I got into college, my coach asked me if I don't mind changing. At that point, honestly, I was there for just an education and just I didn't really think I would go anywhere just because when I got up there, guys are huge.
So the numbering, is it like the single digit up to 20 is your, because I see like a lot of quarterbacks have,
I went up. I was a defensive back in college, and I was number 45.
okay, so like usually the
Mhm.
defensives, they're up in that
Mhm.
numbers.
Yeah.
Who are your single digit people?
Your defensive backs, your receivers. I also had in high school, I had number 2 and number 3 as well. I started out with
Oh,
number 8
okay.
in college, and then I transferred over to number 45.
Yeah. And in rugby, it's the starting 15 is that 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., all the way up to 15. So the 1 jersey is typically the biggest jersey on the team, and then the 15 is typically the smallest. And then it'll go up like 16 and on up is just whoever's on the bench. So like typically I played 1 through 7. I never played beyond that.
That's pretty cool. Any your like what kind of teammates did you guys have or your coaches when you were playing your sports?
Very motivated coaches.
Like were they yelling or were they just like,
It wouldn't be
hey?
football if they didn't yell at you. Honestly.
Like a drill sergeant.
Oh gosh, yes. You got to have a very very thick skin. I can tell you that much. It's not for the weak-hearted.
Mhm.
You got to be able to take criticism very very well.
Mhm.
Learn not to make the same mistake twice. Uh, if not, you will get punished. Anybody ever heard burpees?
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yes.
We did lots of those.
I did 100 one time.
Oh gosh. And you kept
Sounds familiar.
playing? Like you didn't
It
quit?
was practice. All the defensive backs, we did something the coach did not like at all, and I vividly remember it because I know my nose started to bleed. Like I had to keep on going because I wasn't gonna quit.
In rugby, I didn't notice. Do you guys have coaches?
Yeah, we do have coaches. We could have offense, defense, but typically it's just one coach and like so you had yours, they were always like yelling and angry. I've had kind of like a mix. So the British guy that I played for, he was kind of like the angry, crude British guy. You could just picture that in your head. With thick accent and everything. And then I played for another coach. They were a lot more laid back. I played for an Islander coach. He was also really laid back. And we kind of saw like the same results, either way. So I think, especially when you're talking about like at the club level, then it's like how invested are you, in winning, and the coach is just gonna, teach you what you need to do to win. So it's really up to the person to be motivated. And so I found that dynamic kind of interesting when you mentioned like, your coach always yelling, but maybe that's more appropriate for like high schoolers.
High school and college. I mean,
college,
it
too.
was just it got worse in college. I think honestly, uh, it was much more, especially because you think about it in high school, you have your good players and everything else, but once you go to college, you have everybody from the best ones from their school. So it was more of a competition. But the coaches, I mean, I think they're just a little bit more intense in college. I think just because of the fact they knew how much more. I guess it gets you prepared honestly to be able to handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the professional league, you see them yelling and screaming. So I guess that is to prepare you. So here's my other question because my nephew always wanted to play football, and my sister would never let him because of fear of injury. So, what type of injuries did you guys sustain while you guys were playing
Mm.
your sports?
I never broke a bone. I played
Oh, so that's good.
from the age of 12 all the way up to the age of 22. The worst injury I ever had was a torn hip muscle off my pelvic bone. And that happened when I was in 8th grade. And I'm like I said, I healed with. I was supposed to be out for I think 6 weeks. I ended up coming back in 4, so I was able to play the last 2 years. But other than that, I had a minor. I think my body overall was very well kept. So
Mhm.
I mean, ankles I could run full speed, roll it, and still be good. I wouldn't be out for a couple weeks. Other than that, a couple concussions.
Okay. What about you, Nate? What kind of injuries did you get playing rugby?
Plenty, lots of stepped on toes, black toes. I've dislocated my shoulder in one season, like every single game I dislocated it. And the interesting thing about rugby is if it's not like a major injury, the game keeps going. So while my shoulder was dislocated, the game is still going on, and I had to pop it back in. And it's like the worst feeling ever. It's like you can't move your arm, and it's just this extreme pain. And I just remember my friend who always had his dislocated. He would like roll it. So in the middle of the game, I'm doing that. I'm rolling it until the pain went away, and I was like, okay, I'm good, and went right back into the game. I've had cracked ribs. One time I did a tackle and I dropped to the ground on my ribs. I cracked it. I didn't know that I had cracked ribs. I just remember the whole game. I was like, man, I must be out of shape because I can't breathe.
Hurting. Why is it hurting there?
I was still playing the game, full contact with cracked ribs. I didn't realize till afterwards. I had 2 major black eyes. Like if you were to image search like black eyes, you would not find one that was worse than mine. Mine was
I've seen that one. It was pretty bad.
massive. Fortunately, no concussions. My shoulder is kind of messed up. You said you've never broken bones. I think I have broken bones, but I never like went to a doctor.
Never broke a bone.
And I mean, it wasn't serious enough, but I think I had broken my arm because like I couldn't even like hold up like a bottle of water.
Oh well.
I got hit in the arm. Yeah.
So Melanie said that she would have to tape up your ears right before the game so they won't get torn off. Have you seen anybody get their ears torn off?
I seen my teammate, his ear was partially torn off. Like I could see the strands of his flesh like holding it in. He taped it back on. The game's still going. He tapes it back up and he goes right back into the game.
God.
Yeah.
Okay, now did he have to get it sewn back together after?
I don't know. I think he just I don't know what he did. Be honest.
See, I think I'm more towards football now than rugby.
Well, no, either way. I mean, you just rub some dirt on it, wrap it up, and keep on going. I mean,
yeah.
If you're a player, that's what you do. I mean, if you've got injuries, but I mean, you just if it's something small. I mean, like if you can still play, you're gonna go back in.
Okay, what about stories? Coming from behind stories, was there ever a time when you guys were playing where you guys were supposed to lose and you didn't?
Well, I kind of have one, but we still lost.
Okay.
But it made it really interesting, and I know a direct impact on it. We were in high school. We were down 2 touchdowns, and it was less than 3 minutes in the game. And we do what when you score a touchdown and you want to try to get the ball back very quickly, you do what's called an onside kick. And I was, of course, on the kickoff team. So I actually recovered 2 onside kicks in a row because after the first one I recovered, we made a touchdown, came right back, and I recovered another one. And I don't know, you don't hear ever like the same person recovering 2 onside kicks in a row. And I remember seeing the film on it, and it was very electrifying, just seeing everybody in the stands all at the same time just kind of go up. You see the first one go up, but the second one is like, it happened again. But we ended up losing on that one. So, I mean, I wouldn't consider really a comeback. It was just more of one of those things where it would have been really cool if it did.
But still, it kept the other team on their toes.
Oh, it did really scare them.
How about you, Nate?
All right. So there were 2 games that we had against Tyler in one season. They beat us the first time. They beat us by a lot, so it wasn't even close. The second time we had to travel to Tyler, Texas, and play them. This was Division 4. And for one, their field was interesting. So if you're not familiar with Tyler, Texas, East Texas, pretty rural. And it looked like we were pulling up to a farm. Okay. It looked like they cleared out this farmland for us to play. They were using PVC pipe for the goalposts.
Oh gosh.
So typically you don't see that. And the field was actually graded. So like left to right, one side was higher than the other. And we were playing them, and you could tell that a lot of their players were football players. Okay. And they were really, really good athletes. They probably had no business being Division 4. They probably should have been a little bit higher. Whereas our Division 4 team, a bunch of old guys. And I've played on teams before where old guys, they'll always beat like the younger guys just because rugby's not necessarily about who's better physically. It's how well do you operate as a team.
Yeah.
And the older guys, they know like all the tricks and everything for getting away with stuff and for scoring whenever the other team's not paying attention, because it's not just raw brute strength every time. But yeah, they were beating us for most of the game. And I remember like my biggest role was just knowing that the younger players are a little hesitant to like tackle. And I know that in rugby, and it's maybe the same for football, if you kind of hesitate, you're going to get trucked over. So they always gave it to like their biggest guy when they would have the penalties. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to be the one who's going to stop this guy. So whenever he got the ball, full sprint. And I told the guy like next to me, I'm like, hey, I'm going to hit him first. All right. And you're going to have to follow up and take him down, but I'm going to stop him at least. They had to take me out of the game because after doing that so many times, like I couldn't walk straight. But we ended up coming from behind, and then we ended up beating them. and we beat them so bad. Their coach was like reprimanding them for like another hour because he couldn't believe that a bunch of old guys had beat them. And not only that, they tried to report us to the governing league, saying that like we had cheated somehow. And our coach was like, "Hey, we got guys on our team who are like in their 50s. Are you saying we cheated? You couldn't beat us." And so that was my best come from behind story.
That is pretty cool because, even like when I play volleyball with my nephews, we always say, okay, let's play. And then the kids were like, yeah, it's the young people versus the old people. So it's nieces and nephews playing against the aunts, right? And we would beat them, and they're like, you guys cheated. We're like, no, we're just smarter. Because, they had the skill. Like my nephew could do stuff, but if you don't have that teamwork, it doesn't work. And
Nope.
I know my sisters and I had played volleyball together a few times. So here's my other question. So what would you guys, what advice would you give to those who wants to either start playing football in school or rugby, and what precautions would you give them?
Yeah, I can go first. So with rugby, like I said, if you're in a any kind of city, I mean, you could just look it up, like just do a search, and see if they have a club. They even have youth clubs now. Some high schools. I mentioned women's earlier. Women's is full contact. Okay, it's not like any kind of lessened down, watered down league, which kind of like bewilders me about football. Like they don't think women can play football. It's like, but they play rugby just fine. There's a whole international, World Cup for women's rugby too. So kind of makes me wonder like why they don't have it here. But yeah, I mean, typically all your best athletes, they're going to go to football. So usually when you get into rugby, it's just a bunch of guys who kind of just interested in the sport and want to play. I've seen people of all different kind of, physical levels, playing sizes too. Like I knew a circus performer. The guy had to be only like 90 pounds, but he played rugby. So I typically say like if you're brave enough to step onto that field, then you're probably good enough to play, and they'll find a position for you to play.
Now, do you know what age they normally start at? Because I know with football, they even have like, the Pee Wee leagues and all that stuff.
Right.
But with rugby,
It's probably the same where they have kids leagues. Kids leagues aren't that common though right now.
okay.
But one difference there is that they do have college rugby, is that they do have more senior level clubs. So one thing that's kind of lacking in football is they don't have like amateur leagues necessarily for adults to play. Well, they have a lot of that for rugby, because typically after college football, that's it. It's either pros or nothing. There's not really any other smaller leagues. Maybe like
flag
a few.
football, maybe. That's
Yeah,
it,
flag
but nothing
football.
contact.
Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Andrew? Any advice?
I would definitely say if your child is not into the game, don't make them play. First of all, so like me, I love football. If my son he's not interested in the game, I'm not going to force him to do it. I would say if they are interested, know about the game, know how to protect yourself. It is I always considered myself a student of the game. I didn't get hurt because I took all the right angles. I wasn't the fastest, but I was as good as I was because I studied very well, and I knew what angles to take. I wasn't the fastest, but I was fast enough to still make plays. So at the end of the day, I mean, just don't think that it's just barbarians running into each other and just trying to hurt each other. It's not that. There's actually a mind to it. I remember my college notebooks being real thick, and trust me, I mean, we took tests, and if you didn't know what the percentage of that play was with this certain lineup of running, passing, and who was going to go to, hey, you weren't prepared. So always think of it as, one, it's not just people hitting heads. Two, it is a mind game, and like anything else, I mean, if you like it, then try it out. You never know. I mean, it could work out, but like anything else, just learn how to protect yourself and work out, and make sure you get strong in the right places.
So did you actually start flag, or did you go straight on full contact?
I went straight full contact. I played soccer first, and then after that, I went to football. It was more of just like anything else. I was good at kicking the ball, so I did the punting thing, and I could punt a ball pretty good.
That is so cool. So Nate, do you want to go look in our chats and see who's logged on today?
All right. Yeah, let's go see our greetings that we have. Let's see. We have Elsie. We also have JR from here in Fort Worth. Luhadi greeting us from Killeen. Kaluz. We also have Maria, Irish, your wife. She's greeting us.
Oh, that's right.
My wife. Yeah, my wife had to watch a lot of my games. We have Romilu. We also have Oliver. We have Norvi. We have a lot from Kamanava also greeting us. Let's see.
You said Kamanava, right?
I did. We're also greeted by Renz, of course, who was on earlier. Naya from Dallas. Ivy. We also have KC. Let's see. Jane, one of our
regulars.
Our regulars. Yep. Julie Merritt. Let's see. We also have Elmer from Kamanava, Janet, and I said Oliver. Yeah.
You forgot Matt.
I forgot Matt.
You
I
forgot
left out
Matt.
Matt. But yeah, that's it. Also Pauline and Dahlia from Thailand.
Oh, nice. Oh, Dahlia, I might have to get in contact with you because I'm planning to go to Thailand in August to drop off my nephew for study abroad. So hopefully I'll be able to contact with her. So any last words, anything you guys want to talk about with your rugby versus football?
Well, if you want to, watch the game, you can pick it up slowly. There's going to be some major differences between the two sports, but you can find a lot of the games on YouTube, so you can find full matches. And we do have a World Cup every 4 years, kind of like soccer. So yeah.
And I noticed that because when I grew up watching football, because that's what you do here in the States. But when I went to go visit a friend in Australia and they were watching rugby, they're like, "Oh, just watch. You're not gonna get it." And I'm like, "Oh, I got it. This is what they're doing." And they're like, "How'd you get it so fast?" I'm like, "It's a sport. It's
Yeah.
not something too difficult." But yes. So, do you guys want to give out any last shout outs before we end our show?
Shout out to my wife. Thank you for giving me the confidence to go ahead and do this.
Of all the things to be afraid of.
I know, right?
Okay, but did you have fun though?
Oh, I did. It was really good, and that's why when Brother Nathan went ahead and said, "Hey, go ahead and asked me about doing this," I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem. I mean, it's football, so it shouldn't be too bad. I don't have to do any research or anything like that. I just go ahead and talk, so it should be good."
Something you already know.
Yeah.
What about you, Nate? Any shout outs?
Yeah, shout out my wife too, who supported me through those days, even though she didn't want to. But
Well, I mean, I can just imagine, like, you coming home, like you said, bruises and everything. I mean, gosh, people worry about you. And then, like, I could just imagine what your wife was going through. Did she ever watch your games?
yeah, she watched a lot of my games. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I would have just cringed, I think.
Irish never get to saw me play.
No.
No, we met later on in the years.
Well, that's it for our show. I just want to first of all thank Andrew for coming on to the show. It was a pleasure having you. I'd like to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. We will be back next week, same time, 9 a.m. Central Time. And before we end, I do just want to say thank you to our CFO coordinator and SEPSI president, Brother Angelo Irano Manalo, and to our executive minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Until next week, see you all then.